Hey guys, it's Andrea. I'm really sorry that my connection with the Coaches Lab wasn't strong enough. I'm not really sure what's happening, so I'm going to just follow up on my section. So there were some questions about carbohydrate and recovery after a training session. And before you make things too complicated, it's good to ask some very basic questions. What is the session that you've just completed? How you feel after the session that you've just completed? When is your next session? And what are the purposes of the sessions? This will put a bit of context into how fast you need to get carbohydrates into you and which ones are better to choose. So if your session has been a relatively easy, steady state endurance ride, the purpose of which is to push some aerobic adaptations, there's no specific hard work going on in that session, you're trying to stress the body a little bit by withholding the carbohydrates moderately to force mitochondrial adaptations and fat oxidation. So if you have the opportunity to delay carbohydrates a little bit, then to do so is going to help with the outcome. And then to choose a mixed meal based on natural carbohydrates like rice, potatoes, oats. If it's breakfast, there could be a banana in there with some protein, with some veggies or fiber, and with a little bit of fat. That will keep you on a stable blood sugar level that's slowly released. That will keep your insulin response moderate rather than spiked. And it will help to keep you in a sort of fat oxidation mode while also assisting recovery. So this is possible if your session has been an aerobic session and you don't have another session for about 24 hours where the speed of glycogen replenishment isn't urgent. You'll get it achieved over the 24 hours with just a moderate, healthy, low glycemic indexed carbohydrate intake. Okay, so that's one scenario. If your session was an intense session, it had quite a lot of work in it, so like the SST mix or a threshold mix or something that has you doing specific sets of work that are up around FTP. So that session will have depleted glycogen a little bit more because it was at the higher end of intensity. So we need to put the glycogen, the carbohydrate fuel back into the muscle, especially if you have another session within 24 hours or the next session is intense. So then we're looking at getting the meal in quite quickly. If you have 24 hours, it can still be a mixed meal containing some natural carbohydrates with some protein, with a little bit of fat if you want, with a bit of veggies or with a bit of fruit. But again, with that 24 hours to recover, you getting the carbohydrates in quickly, but not having to get them in with a short time lag, but not in a liquid or very, very fast form, will have you recovered optimally. Okay, so the next scenario could be that you've done a hard session, you're feeling a little bit low because you've expended a lot of blood sugar levels and your glycogen stores have started to deplete, and you have another session. For example, you've decided to do a race, or you have a run session if you're a triathlete that has a bit of work, tempo work, or a long run later on in the day. Then you have a shorter amount of time to recover, and you will need some carbohydrate fuel stored back in the muscle to fuel the next session. So then we're talking about getting in carbohydrates quicker and in a faster form. So as soon as you can after the session, if you want to get it in even quicker, you can make the choice of your carbohydrate a liquid. So it could be a smoothie or a shake. But for most of us, just having a bowl of oats with banana, with some Greek yogurt, with some nuts and seeds will suffice. Or having some cold potatoes with a salad and some meat or some fish. It doesn't have to be a specific sports recovery drink for these training scenarios. If you've got to get it in even faster and we're at a critical point, so you're racing, multi-stage racing, or you're competing in some Zwift races and you've got a short recovery time between them and the outcome matters, then you might want to look at specific recovery products. They can be geared to a 4-to-1 carbohydrate to protein or a 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein. Some of us are sort of need a little bit more carbohydrates, particularly athletes that are slightly larger, male athletes, people trying to maintain weight. If you're slightly lighter or aiming for a little bit of weight loss or fat loss, then the 3-to-1 formulation may be better for you. So then we're looking to get things in really, really quickly. If you don't want to use a recovery product, then maybe a whey protein shake with some banana, fresh fruit, dried fruit, some nuts and seeds, some yogurt, cottage cheese added in. This will still get into the digestive system more quickly and be absorbed from the digestive system into the bloodstream. So if you can see how I'm trying to put a little bit of context around things, these are the things that we need to ask ourselves. So when do we need these fast carbohydrates, which could be banana, fruit, recovery products, dried fruit, liquids, homemade smoothies? This could be when recovery is urgent. If we're very low in blood sugar after a session, so you've done a really hard race, you didn't get much opportunity on the bike to get the fueling in, so you're very low, then you need to get fast carbs in. If you've a second session in the day, if you've just done a very intense, long or hard-working session, or if you're a larger athlete that has really high energy requirements, you know, we're all quite different. So then you might want to get the fast carbs in. When do we need the slower carbs or a slightly delayed recovery? Well then, sorry, I've got notes in front of me. I was thinking about this all. I was really excited to talk to all of you on the call. So we don't always need the fast recovery. And this may be when we've got, like I said, 24 hours to recover for the next session. When we're trying to prolong fat oxidation from the session, we can delay things and then also choose more natural carbs in a mixed meal towards the moderate carbohydrate intake. So a moderate carb plate, if I can draw my plate, you're sort of looking at a half of the plate as your veggies, a quarter of your plate as your carbs, and a quarter of your plate as your protein. So a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrate, and that will help optimize the aerobic adaptions, endurance adaptions that we're trying to get. Asker Jekendrup talks about the research that's been done on possibly delaying carbohydrate intake as part of your nutrition periodization approach. He has a paper written about this. So before, in the kind of previous 10-15 years, everything was about that recovery window, having to eat, force it in straight away within 30 minutes to get recovery in. And yes, it's true. The faster we get those carbohydrates in straight after a session, the quicker and the greater the rate of glycogen replenishment. So there has been a difference in the total amount of carbohydrate replenished as glycogen the sooner we get it in, and that diminishes after the 2-hour point. So yes, as regards to recovery from training, if you get the carbs in quick, if you get the carbs in fast, we replenish glycogen better. However, is this best for a training adaptation? Well, studies are saying maybe not. You know, you have to stress the body a little bit. And the research lately is showing that if we sometimes, at a good opportunity, at the right time in our training week, in the context of everything that is going on before and after, sometimes if we delay the carbohydrate intake, it will force more adaptions, specifically in relation to endurance and within the mitochondria and also within our ability to fat adapt. So some sessions, like I said, the easy, slow, steady state aerobic rides, when we don't have anything for another 24 hours and that next race or session isn't a race, then maybe you can delay things a little bit. How long? Well, until you're hungry, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then have a mixed meal. So this will help with your endurance adaptation. Sometimes we're not hungry. Sometimes the session, you know, if it's an hour and we've eaten well before it, we still have glycogen in the tank. We're not completely low. We have about an hour and a half to 2 hours of glycogen in the tank for kind of moderate type sessions. So we're not under pressure to eat straight away afterwards. So you can delay it a little bit, you know, if you haven't got something really important where the quality of the session, the performance and the intensity are all right up there. For some of us that may be striving for weight loss or body fat loss, again, with these easier low intensity sessions or shorter sessions, we may want to just prioritize getting protein in and a little bit of fat if we want, but the protein for the muscle recovery and the muscle repair and adaptation process without having a lot of carbohydrates. So it could be a more protein dominant meal with just a little bit of carbohydrates as the sort of afterthought on the plate. So you're looking at a salad with maybe a really small amount of carbohydrate, maybe 1 or 2 baby potatoes at most, with some meat, fish, vegetarian protein. So that sort of meal. And that will assist the weight loss process, because a lot of us have, we've been overdoing the carbohydrates, and it's leading to weight problems, because you've been doing everything right according to the rules that were created before about having to constantly get the carbohydrates in, right before, during, and afterwards. But actually, ultimately, our calorie intake has been going up too much. So that's just a little bit about the timing. If I've missed anything, post some questions underneath and I'll ask them. Another rule around carbohydrate that I think is very important is that mostly we can choose